So I'm here with writer Tony James. I had the pleasure of tabling next to him about a month ago at Brooklyn Comic Con. So it's great to chat again. So Tony, how you doing?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on the show.
Yeah, well, no, thanks for being here. I'm really looking forward to it, especially
Yeah,
as someone who's into sci-fi, into westerns. I think there's a lot a lot to discuss today as
yeah,
we talk
for
about some of
sure.
your work.
Yeah.
So the first question any creator that I have on, I always kind of want to ask first is, uh, what, and you can answer however you think fits, but what is your kind of origin story as a creator? And then specifically kind of how whatever your story is took you to the world of writing comics.
This is kind of a two stage. When I was really young, like 5, 6, my parents would get those like Garfield collected editions that come in that like kind of horizontal form factor.
Yeah.
And I really enjoyed kind of the dry humor of those comics. I even like went as far as to like make my own kind of like Garfield knockoff book that I would
Mhm.
draw in the basement. And then later, as I got older, I read the trade for the Death and Return of Superman. And I was just really kind of blown away by like that big scope of that story and all the different iterations of Superman. I thought Superboy had the coolest look with the leather jacket and the gloves, and I just really wanted to kind of tell stories that were like had that big scope, like Death and Return of Superman, just kind of something that you felt really comfortable when you've read the first issue and you're like, oh, this is going to be like a big story, so I should just like get comfortable.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's that's it. And then it's, been writing kind of my entire life, and like right after college I was like, movies are very expensive to make. Let's make comic books instead.
Yeah. Although comic books are pretty expensive as well, which unfortunately,
Well, they're
um,
less expensive comparatively to
fair enough. That, yeah,
movies.
absolutely. So now,
Yeah.
what made you decide? So did you start when you started writing? Now, did you study like writing or creative arts in school?
Mostly like film and stage stuff.
Okay.
Because that was kind of like the initial like I want to write movies for Hollywood, and then you kind of like learn about the business and how it's like, oh, they're not really interested in artistic integrity over there. They kind of want you to. You're basically like a construction worker, right? So you have to
Yeah.
kind of build their specific bathroom as fast as you can, and that's how you
Yeah.
get hired for new jobs. So if you want to do something original, Hollywood's not really the place for you.
Yeah.
So I wanted to kind of more focus on my own work.
Yeah. Now, what made you decide then? Like, what was the impetus to like really focus on comics rather than, let's say, like prose or any other, anything like what was it that made you decide, I'm going to write specifically for comics?
It was really just kind of like just trying it out. Like my first comic was called Reloader. It's like about a revenge story set in virtual reality. It was like a cyberpunk comic, and the internet really kind of took to it. And they were kind of like really into like you should make more of these.
Mhm.
And I was like, okay, so all right, so I have a knack for something here. And just trying to feed into it ever since, and just trying to make a better comic book.
Yeah. Now, like, what as a writer, I feel like writing for comics is such a different experience than any other, any other style of writing.
Mhm.
Do you have like a process for writing? Like, do you, as somebody who's, like for writing, do you how do you manage it? Like, maybe since you're not doing the line art, um, like do you write visually, or do you kind of leave that to the artist, or what's your kind of process for actually like putting together like comic scripts?
Well, it always kind of starts very abstract. I go for a lot of walks. I listen to a lot of different music. I mean, sometimes it's instrumental, sometimes it's a rap song or an old rock song, something like that. And depending on the story that I'm interested in writing, I start to kind of see like the movie trailer in my head. It's just a bunch of scattered images of like, oh, that would be cool if you could like see that visually. And then once I have kind of about 30 of those types of like snapshot moments, I put it in a list. And then I just start to pitch like, all right, which act do you think that this could happen in? Oh, like, oh, there's a big train robbery. Oh, that's probably in the middle. Oh, there's this big death. Oh, that's probably like towards the end. and then once it's all ordered, then I will start to kind of do like basically a treatment of like, all right, what's the actual plot, and start getting into the details of what the plot is going to be.
Yeah.
And then you start building out like the specific characters have their own art, their own outlines, their individual arcs have outlines. Yeah, and then it's just basically like this 80-page document that's got like everything that you need to know about your characters, their motivations, their wants, their needs, the types of like words that they would use. Like Moonshine has a lot of that cowboy slang, so they wouldn't call it a train, they'd call it a dangler. And just, you know, kind of having a list in there just that you could call up at a moment's notice, so that
Yeah.
you're never confused as to like what's going on in the story.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, and that's kind of similar. I probably don't have as detailed of a kind of like Bible for the story, I guess, almost like, prior to
Yeah.
doing it. But I definitely have a similar process of like, spent a lot of time. I find I'm, like in the shower and sleeping for whatever reason. The times I'm like most creative, which are the hardest times to put things down. But like,
Yeah.
that it's like a lot of time of just thinking over things. You kind of start broadly building out scenes, lines,
Mm.
and over time that stuff gets written down, and then at some point there's like, it's almost like the pressure is, it's about to burst, and that's when I know I can write, and then I can start actually like putting pen to paper. But
Yeah.
it definitely like
Hmm.
that process works, as far as just kind of gathering ideas
Yeah.
throughout without the pressure of like having to write everything down.
I mean, my process is very exhaustive. I am sure that there is a more efficient way to go about crafting a new story. I've read something in a writing book once, was that like every writer has their own process and
Yeah.
they all hate it. They all wish that their version of how they make things could be better, and I
Yeah.
definitely feel that.
But I feel like that's what works, right? Like for everybody, like for me, my process, which is the most frustrating, is it's frustratingly slow. Like I'm not a fat, like
Hmm.
it's fast once I'm like, I hit that, there's a point where I'm like, okay, I can get it. But other than that, like,
Hmm.
it's really hard for me to like write an entire script, or even scenes. Like I'm very, very slow in writing. But yeah, you're right. Like,
Hmm.
everybody just has their process, and I think that's what works for you, right? And what's going to get the best stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
So, when it comes to like, kind of the, writing again for comics, like and working with an artist, like every script is a little bit different. Now, are you the type to give a lot of direction for your artists on how you want like every particular scenes, angles, colors, or are you kind of more, you give them an idea and let the artist kind of run with it?
I well, the descriptions in my panels are always very straightforward.
Yeah.
Just what are the most important things to see. It's not really about angles. I think that part of it is really up to the artist.
Yeah.
Because however you tell the story, it has to be funneled through the artist's vision.
Yeah.
So like when you're looking for an artist, it's really important that you like the artist and their style, because it's like, all right, are you okay with like, the whatever's in their portfolio? Are you okay with them making similar choices to your book? So you don't, drive them crazy, and you allow them to play to their strengths and the type of things that they want to draw. And I provide a lot of references. My other book is called Star Noir. It's the 1940s detective with aliens. So for Los Angeles, 1940s Los Angeles, I provide like, drive folders that are like full of buildings and architecture and cars and stuff like that. And then from there, the artist just goes and does their own interpretation of all that stuff.
Yeah, so like speaking of Star Noir, that's kind of what put you on my radar. I saw I'd seen it posted on several, like, on Reddit and on some Facebook groups that we're on, and
Mhm.
hey, it looks great. I'm a fan of noir stories. I also love Star Wars, so right away it was like something that drew me in.
Mhm.
But for you, what was the obviously, and a clever title, obviously Star Noir.
Yeah.
But what was the idea for you? Like, what gave you that idea to create this kind of noir detective story? And then coming up with the title.
Was kind of a combination of two passions that I have. One is old Hollywood movies from the 40s. I really like that kind of like fast talking dialogue. They almost like like stage play like nature of it. How it's like, rather than a whole bunch of cuts, characters are just kind of moving around the space. Um, and LA Noir is also LA Noir is one of my favorite video games.
Okay,
I
yeah,
just really love the way they kind of show that era, and all the detective work that goes in it. And then the other is just like kind of a guilty pleasure of like alien conspiracies,
yeah,
like all the fun ones about like crop circles and people who like have been abducted and all that, basically all the stuff that you would show on like an Ancient Aliens
yeah,
episode. Um, and just I just thought it would be kind of a cool idea to kind of like mesh the two, because I wanted to do a detective story.
mhm,
And yeah, just the idea of kind of like, all right, well, what if his partner is an alien, and what if it's in the 1940s? And I just thought that was pretty. That would be an interesting concept for a story. And then, I was just thinking about different titles, or like, what would be kind of fitting for it. And Star Noir was just kind of a fun mashup of of two words and two genres. Yeah, I just thought Star Noir was fun to say, and yeah, sure enough, other people thought it was fun as well.
yeah. Now, how many? So you're 3 issues into that story, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Eh,
yeah. There's 6 books. Each one's about 50 pages long. So they're good sizable chapters.
Yeah, and then do you have a like? Is there a set amount that you plan on for that series?
This one is 6 books.
Hmm.
There's different permutations of Star Noir. There's other precincts in Los Angeles. There's also a New York
Hmm.
one that I want to do as a companion piece.
Yeah,
Just kind of have it loosely connected. But that one has like a lot of like old speakeasies and old subway stations. But it's like kind of on the same premise of like this alien comes down and has to work with this human detective to solve the mystery of some shapeshifter or some other alien entity that's kind of threatening humans.
yeah. No, with when you're working on several projects at the same time, do you, or well, or I guess the question is, having several things kind of that you're working on, are you at any point ever working on producing multiple projects at the same time, or do you stick with like, okay, we work on Star Noir, now Moonshine, now like, how do you manage kind of so many things, and also like just the costs associated with kind of doing all that?
Well, the managing the different projects, it really is kind of a hot potato back and forth.
Yeah,
And it's really just like all of the work that I have to do for all projects is on like a giant list, and then you really just kind of narrowing it down to like, all right, well, what's the most pressing? So
yeah,
there was like a week where it was just like, okay, we have to do stuff for Moonshine because the Kickstarter is coming up. So there were notes for artists for Star Noir where it was like, okay, well, they have to hang out for just half a second so I can kind of get this Moonshine stuff underway. And then once it was underway, I was like, all right, now it's back to Star Noir. So it's just like today it was like one part promoting Moonshine, the other part like prepping new Star Noir pages for color, while I had to quickly like sign off on some sketches that the artist is going to go then do detailed pencils on. So it's just a lot of just moving back and forth between projects. And then cost wise, I mean, the internet is largely responsible for Star Noir's existence. So, I can't make the book without Kickstarter's help.
yeah,
Luckily, they are very passionate readers that want to see more books. So yeah, cost wise, the internet really picks up the tab on
yeah,
ensuring that each new book exists.
yeah,
And then I'm just trying to like an air traffic controller, like when one plane lands, another one's got to go in the air. And
yeah.
a lot of days it's just coming out of a fire hose.
Yeah,
So
no,
I
that's a
just
good
try
good
to
way to put it.
so I just really just try to manage as much as I can, and just enjoy the little victories that you get done. All right, well, I got new pages approved. All right, well, I got new colors in. All right, well, I got a few backers for the project. So it's just trying to do as much as you can, and keep your sanity in the
Yeah.
process.
Yeah. So now with no, so a couple things that I really liked about Star Noir, and I want to kind of get your take on how you're able to manage these things. So first, you brought up a little bit, and we'll also talk maybe a little bit about how you manage this with Moonshine. But obviously, when you're dealing with the time, a period piece, and you're trying to get somewhat historically accurate dialogue, how do you go about making sure that you're using words, phrases, idioms of the time? How do you make sure you're doing it correctly, and then how do you also just manage that you're not overdoing it and that you're still kind of trying to appeal to a modern audience that's going to be consuming it?
I think it's just kind of like balance. I think I watched so many uh, like 1940s movies from that era. I think a lot of it is just kind of hardwired into my brain.
Mhm.
Um, I think kind of the characters kind of naturally speak like that just because I've watched so many movies. Um, but a lot of those idioms, a lot of those phrases, like we use variations of those of today. So I think it still reads well for a modern audience. But you get like you beat the devil around the horn, or we're both in the soup, or
Yeah.
these kind of phrases that seem kind of hokey, but because of the 1940 setting, like a reader would kind of expect that type of stuff. And I just make sure that I just don't overdo it. Just
Yeah.
make sure the characters always sound believable, so that the reader can engage with them.
Yeah. Now, did you find is there a phrase for, let's say, like we'll get to Western later, but from the like that time period, that's like your favorite phrase or something that like you wish would come back today?
Ah, man. I mean, we don't use like we're in the soup, like we're in
Mhm.
trouble.
Yeah.
That's a funny one. I use that in my regular life. Oh,
Yeah.
it was a bad Kickstarter day, so it looks like we're all in the soup. That, that one's kind of a fun one.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's like a whole like list of idioms that I have for the Star Noir like outlines that I have. But probably that one. That was probably the word in the soup. I think actually I
Nice.
was at a baseball game once, as a Yankee fan, like at City Field, and I was talking to a Mets fan, and both teams are doing terribly. So I said, "Oh, looks like we're both in the soup," and he actually laughed because he got
Okay.
the phrasing.
Oh, good, good. Yeah, yeah, that's even better, right? Like if you use it, then somebody actually gets what you're saying.
Yeah.
So now, and this the other thing is, I think you also do a really good job of kind of mixing genres, right? So it has that noir aesthetic while
Mhm.
also really being legitimately, sci-fi.
Mhm.
How do you go about like do you feel like you have to actively work on mixing the genres so that you're not too focused on one or the other? Did you feel like that comes naturally? Like, how do you go about that?
I think it's trying to make sure that one genre is leading, and the other one is trying to be baked in. Like with Star Noir, that 1940s noir aesthetic, that's what leads. And I try to figure out how all of the alien aspect, the sci-fi aspect, fits into it, into a way where it doesn't take over and diminish the 1940s setting, so we fully commit to that setting. And so it's the aliens that appear in Alan, our main character, his backyard. It's the lounge singer that has secret eyes that let you know that she's not from Earth. And just trying to make sure that, like, yeah, the sci-fi stuff doesn't like take over the noir setting. Like I remember there was one reader in the beginning, when the first book was out, they were worried that at one point the detective would be like on another planet at a certain
Mhm.
point, and that I would like
Okay.
leave the 1940s aesthetic
Hmm.
behind. And it's like,
Yeah.
no, this story like fully commits, like it
Yeah.
brings the aliens into this world, and has a specific purpose, and doesn't try to overshadow the 1940 setting.
No, and I think you do like. Now, I'm not just saying it. Like, I think you do a brilliant job of that, both
Cool.
like thematically, but also just visually. Like, it keeps that look, but it's so like, wait, but there's an alien. It's like it's great because it's like so familiar, but then the alien looks exactly like it fits. It fits on the page. In a
Yeah.
lot in a lot of it. I think you do a great job with that with Star Noir.
Yeah. Yeah.
So now let's turn over to Moonshine. So
Mm.
I know we talked about it a little bit. You mentioned, because I was selling my Western, and you mentioned that you were working on the sci-fi Western. So tell me a little bit about Moonshine. And yeah, tell the listeners like what's the story about. How'd you come up with it?
Okay, so the moon is rich in this element called helium-3, and it's created by the solar winds from the sun, just basically pummeling the moon for billions of years. Because the moon has no atmosphere, a lot of that solar energy gets absorbed into the lunar dirt and the rocks, and it creates this element called helium-3. And helium-3, scientists say that like 200 pounds of that stuff could power the city of Dallas for a year. So when we're able to successfully, create a mining colony on the moon, that is the energy source that will probably replace fossil fuels,
Mhm.
because the moon is just covered in this stuff. There are small elements that we have of helium-3 on Earth, but because of our atmosphere and because of like our magnetic poles, a lot of that stuff doesn't penetrate Earth's atmosphere. So I thought that was a good kind of premise to kind of fit our Western around,
Mhm.
where our outlaws, who are called rovers, they got to kind of band together and ride to the far side of the moon to repair these reactors. And there's plenty of complications that happen on this mission. There's not everything is goes according to a plan. There's a government called Saros that's kind of hiding some secrets along the way, and it ends up becoming like a suicide mission essentially.
Mhm.
And a bunch of rovers leave, and at a select few very come back. And there's a lot of dangers along the way. I mean, not only do you have rival gangs, but there are four types of moonquakes that happen.
Mhm.
One is caused by the polarity that the tidal way the tidal lock between Earth and the moon kind of stretches the moon a little bit, which creates a moonquake. There's one that's caused by asteroids just like hitting the lunar surface. There's one that's caused by temperature spikes, because the moon, when it's in sunlight, is like plus 250 degrees Fahrenheit, and then at night it's like sub 250 degrees. So when it shifts from dark to light, like it goes from a very frozen rock to like a very hot one. It's basically going to a deep freezer to an oven, and they're both
Mhm.
trying to kill you.
Yeah.
And there's actually a moment in the story where they're having an argument at camp, and as the light shifts and the temperature spikes, it creates an earth moonquake. And the fourth one is known as a shallow moonquake, and scientists are not really sure what causes it. And that's where we sort of inject our aliens. So, like, we have these aliens called creeps that kind of burrow out of the lunar dirt, and when they come out, they cause their own sort of moonquake as well. So just a fun way to kind of blend some of the science and
Yeah.
with the story.
Well, yeah, that was my next question. So I guess it sounds like you've got a good grasp on, like, if you've got a good grasp on some of the science of what happens on the moon. So now, is it that you use the science in clever ways to inform the story, or do you try to keep it like, I don't think it's hard sci-fi, but are
Mhm.
you trying to make it like hard sci-fi and keep it as scientifically accurate as possible?
I try to keep it like there's a element of believability, and Star
Mhm.
Noir has that too. Even though there are aliens and then
Mhm.
you see a spaceship and stuff, it's a practicality and believability,
Yeah.
despite kind of the crazy bizarre circumstances that we're in. And I think some of the science really kind of guides those decisions,
Yeah.
because it's like we kind of map out this western, and then some of the complications that happen are a result of just the lunar environment.
Mhm.
Like the moonquake. There's a whole scene where they're trying to escape while a moonquake is happening.
Yeah.
And they're the our rovers, our cowboys, they're essentially seismologists, so they're
Mhm.
like experts in when the next moonquake is going to hit, and they actually like have like little seismometers that they set around base camp to kind of detect when something's going to happen.
Yeah. No, what now why Western? Like, what made you decide that, because it's a great sci-fi idea or and
Mhm.
concept. Why, like, kind of mix with the Western genre for this story?
Um, well, Western, outside of the 1940s detective stuff, I also really love Westerns. Tombstone is my favorite Western, probably my most quoted. All of the Doc Holliday lines in
Mhm.
that movie, I quote all the time. And then, when it comes to dialogue, something like the TV show Deadwood, or even Quentin Tarantino's The Hateful Eight,
Mhm.
that kind of elongated way of speaking is really interesting to me. And figuring out a way to kind of, use these expansive words, but not alienate the reader and still
Mhm.
have it very accessible, so that you don't need like a dictionary, like while
Yeah.
you're reading the dialogue.
Yeah.
And in some instances, like context clues kind of help you understand essentially what the characters are after in each scene. So I really like the challenge of the dialogue kind of having this elongated style and still having the reader be able to access it. And then just telling like a love letter to westerns. I mean, the Red Dead Redemption is the reason I have a mustache. Like
Okay.
I was playing it during the pandemic. My Arthur Morgan had a look kind of like this, and I was like,
Mhm.
could I pull that off? Like, and we're all locked in, so it's just a great
Yeah.
time to grow a mustache. Um,
Yeah.
so yeah, kind of in the way that like Star Noir, lets me kind of, flex my love for 1940s Hollywood movies. This Moonshine allows me to flex my love for westerns, and what ties them both together is also an equal passion for sci-fi.
Now, do you have a favorite Western idiom or phrase that you wish would come back?
Uh, Dangler.
Okay.
That's the name for a train.
Mhm.
They call it Dangler. Get your back up. When you're really angry about something.
Mhm.
What's gotten your back up today.
Yeah.
That one's good. Yeah, I think those are two pretty good ones
Nice.
that I like. Yeah,
Yeah, I didn't know the Dangler. And there's a train in the second book.
yeah,
Kind of starts with a train robbery. So I gotta see if I
yeah,
see if
yeah,
I would incorporate
yeah. They call it
that.
a yeah. Another one is called. You can't really use this on the moon, but it's
Mhm.
burn the breeze. That
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
you want to ride
Yeah. You
fast.
actually, yeah, use
There's
that.
just there's no breeze on the moon, so
Yeah.
you can't quite use
Yeah.
that one. But that one's a fun one.
Yeah, that one's in my first book. Yeah,
Yeah,
have that use that line. Yeah, I like that.
yeah,
That one's good. I also like Above Snakes.
yeah. Above
Is a
snakes.
good
Yeah,
one
above
too.
snakes is
Yeah.
a good one. Yeah, I love that one. Yeah.
All right. Are there are there any Easter eggs or anything connecting Moonshine to the Star Noir universe, or are they in their own worlds and never be connected?
They're yeah,
Yeah.
they're separate.
Yeah.
I haven't decided if I'm ever going to do the Stephen King thing and then
Yeah.
loosely
Yeah.
connect them all. So that yeah, but yeah, no, they're their own separate flavors. They're all in their own separate worlds. Yeah, yeah. I think as time goes on and I get to do more different series. Um, yeah, I kind of like having these things being their own contained worlds.
Yeah. No, it makes
'Cause
sense.
they present their own challenges. And I really kind of want to steer into figuring out how to kind of overcome those challenges and tell a great story.
Yeah. No, there definitely is kind of a kind of connection between like kind of the kind of energy harvesting of the moon and like frontier culture. Like,
Hmm.
did you do any like additional research, to try to get things kind of not historically accurate, but kind of accurate to maybe how frontier times would have been, or did you do any extra work in that way?
Well, yeah, I mean, kind of a big trope of westerns is your cowboys fighting against modernity.
Hmm.
There's their old ways that they are accustomed to, and
Yeah.
wherever they're currently living, they're trying to be squeezed out. Like, the the opening of Moonshine, there's like a major city called Meridian, where most people live, and our cowboys they live in another area called the outskirts, and they've decided that they want minimal government control and they want to kind of live off the land, and so they kind of struggle with living off the land while they kind of have to like begrudgingly adhere to some government contracts and some government oversight. So they're always kind of fighting against what I said, the modernity of not being consumed by the big cities.
Yeah. No, I guess the question I have for you based on this, because in talking to you about the story, that's a lot of world building, and I think
Yeah.
one of the biggest challenges with comics, especially if you're doing like single issues,
Mhm.
is how to tell the story, but do it in a way that's kind of efficient and succinct, because you only have so many pages.
Yeah.
Um, so my question for you, so question is, how do you work in that world building in a way that works, but that's not taking up too much dialogue, in a story that you're trying to tell, especially like in a single issue?
I mean, a lot of the world building stuff is just in the background. I mean, the plot is always the centerpiece. And you know, like all the science that I explained, you know, there's no character that stops to explain the science to you. You know, something will be told anecdotally, but the plot and the, you know, the character arcs, you know, this is a story about karma. And you know, is it possible to, like, you know, trump over a bad deed with a good deed?
Yeah.
And a lot of the rovers in this gang, they're struggling with different facets of that. So a lot of the world building, you know, it really just is in the background. Like, you know, when our scientist that goes on the mission with these rovers, when he first lands on the moon, like he rides past like the Apollo landing site, but that's just like a panel. Like we don't
Mhm.
stop to explain anything. It's just like, yeah, it's a, you know, it's a historic site. And that's just sort of like this one little thing that a reader can go like, oh, hey, that's the Apollo landing site. That's cool. Um, but it doesn't. It never stops the story. The
Yeah.
plot is always the driving force.
Yeah, got it. So now, when it comes to like westerns, like I've always felt like westerns, it's a fun sandbox to play in.
Mm,
Just because like you do have, you can tell it in any way. You can be, be it straightforward. You can tell it modern. You can tell it
mm,
on the moon. There's all kinds of ways to really tell that and make it
mm.
work. And then outside of the kind of old versus the new, right? Like, what are some other core elements that you think are really important for somebody trying to craft like a compelling western narrative?
I mean, there's always like an element of honor.
Mhm.
You know, westerns always kind of have, you know, they're always struggling with being good people, even though they're bad people.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of like a really interesting, kind of emotional hook. You know, you've got people who've done a lot of bad things, and they're trying to, you know, live a new life, or you know, a lot of that stuff that they used to do is coming back to haunt them. And I think our main character Wade is really kind of struggling with that. I mean, there was a rover that he knew that was like left on the far side because they were attacked by a bunch of these creeps, these aliens that come out of the dirt. And so he's kind of like wrestling with that person still being out there, and that kind of desire to want to leave this life where he's managing a ranch of robotic horses that we call chargers. um, he has this kind of desire to like get back out there on the lunar surface. And there are relationships that he's built in his little small town, and he has to kind of wrestle with kind of leaving some of that stuff behind. Um, yeah, so there's a lot. There's a lot. There's I think kind of yeah, that honor and the kind of wrestling with that is kind of like a big component for the characters.
Yeah, that makes sense. That's great. Like, I think that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Now, do you have a favorite like kind of character archetype? When it comes to westerns, like you kind of partial to like the lawman or the drifter or the outlaw, like anyone that really speaks to you.
I like the hard nosed character that becomes soft by the end.
Mhm.
I think there's a lot of power in that. You know, especially if when the events of the story kind of force them to look inward and kind of and wrestle with who they are as people. There's definitely a character that I have. Her name is Oakley, and she's very like tough as nails, like a gun nut. You know, doesn't really kind of, you know, doesn't have any sort of breakdown moments, but because of the events of the story, they kind of force her into this, to be more introspective into who she is, and kind of the mistakes that she's made along the way. So
Mhm.
it's a really interesting character arc to watch, like a really tough as nails character, you know, become more emotional and more in touch with kind of who they are internally.
Yeah. Okay, no, that's great. So
Yeah.
now I wanted to shift a little bit to Kickstarter, because obviously like you've run several Kickstarters at this point successfully,
Mhm.
and I think it can be a challenge. So
Mhm.
looking back on kind of your experience so far, what have you done, let's say with Moonshine, that you learned through your first few campaigns that maybe you wouldn't have done or you didn't do, the first time or first couple times around?
Well, I mean, a lot of my lessons for Moonshine, they're kind of carryovers from new lessons that I learned for Star Noir. I mean, because before that, I did Reloader, and
Mhm.
Reloader, you know, even though that was a successful campaign, I was really bad with like communicating with backers. and fulfillment like took a long time, and
Mhm.
that was not good. I did not want to repeat that.
Yeah.
So Star Noir, it was like trying to treat it like almost like, I mean, you should treat it like a business, but I was treating it even more so like a business. I was very kind of cutthroat of like, these are deadlines. This is, I give my my backers like by monthly updates.
Mhm.
So they're always hearing from me. They're always seeing new pages. They always know, the stage that the book is in its production. And a lot of that brought Star Noir a lot of success and a lot of trust with backers. And with Moonshine, it's just trying to keep the party going, just trying to
Yeah.
do that again, like, because they respond to that. Backers really like when you communicate with them, that they're always in the loop, and they're always seeing new pages. You're getting, there's that proof of life that we're still working on it, we're
Yeah.
still here. So yeah, there were a lot of mistakes I made with my very first Kickstarter that made Star Noir better, and now I'm trying to carry that over into Moonshine, and just continue to have success with a
Yeah.
new series.
So, with Kickstarter, there's always a big thing is like the different kinds of reward tiers and stretch goals and extras. And what do you find, like anything in particular that you have for this campaign that you'd like to talk about? And then also, like, what do you find has been successful, and then maybe things that maybe have not been successful, in your experience?
Well, one of the exciting ones we did an Akira poster that was kind of inspired by that classic pill, the one that
Yeah.
everybody does.
Yeah.
I joked about it on Twitter when I posted it. I was like, sometimes the only way to kind of get around a cliche is to go through it. So we just
Yeah.
like, just let's get it over the way now. Let's do the Akira print now. That way we never have to come back to it ever again.
Yeah.
And I actually got that idea from Brooklyn Comic Con. There was a creator to my left, and they have a lot of pop culture prints. And I was noticing that people that came to my table, they wanted to grab the book, maybe a poster, and that's great. But like prints wise, they were kind of very iffy on that stuff.
Mhm.
And so I was like talking to that artist, and he was like, "Oh, well, why don't you like do pop culture prints of your characters? Like you have a
Yeah.
1940 setting. Why don't we create like a 1940s Batman or something, so
Yeah.
that somebody wants to get that print with the book or something?" And so we decided to do that with Moonshine, where it just is like, I was thinking about like, okay, he's cowboys, got the horse, and even though I didn't want to do the Akira thing, I was like, no, we got to do something else. Everyone does the
Yeah.
Akira thing. It was the one idea that was like just screaming at me as like,
Yeah.
we should try it. We should probably do it because it's the one
Yeah.
that most fits, that people will really recognize.
Yeah.
And our team put together a really awesome print.
Yeah.
It looks great.
Yeah, no, it's it's always a challenge like figuring out what works and what doesn't, and then the what like sometimes it's like what I don't want to do it, but it's like it makes sense and it looks good, right?
Yeah,
At the end of the day, I think that's what matters more than anything, and that is what's gonna kind of draw people in.
yeah, for
Um,
sure.
so what advice do you have? Like, would you share for like any emerging writers who are ready to launch on Kickstarter? Are there any kind of like three best practices for anybody that's thinking about getting a Kickstarter launched for their comic?
Um, Well, when you're running the Kickstarter, you got to take it seriously. You got to essentially look at it as a small business. You got to make sure you have a proper team that like meets the deadlines. I think before Reloader, I would meet kind of artists that were very like, let's be friends, and I'll give you pages
Mhm.
whenever I feel
Yeah.
like it. And you're like, well, we have deadlines, and people expect
Yeah.
stuff from us, so we can't really kind of hang out and babysit pages. So you got to find a really committed team. I always found that any artist that's been published, and not published in like the sense that they did Marvel or Dark Horse, it's just published by somebody, because that kind of shows that they see projects to completion and that they're reliable. I think that's really helpful. I think, uh, I mean, I didn't take this advice, but you should probably, with your goal, try to start at maybe like a 5K. Like
Yeah.
I put all the chips on red with Star Noir, and it's like, let's just do 10, and because that's what because that's what it costs to make that book.
Yeah.
Um, I don't really recommend that if you're first starting out with your first
Yeah.
campaign. Probably a 5K goal is probably more than enough, and then every other campaign after that, just try to like raise more than that. And I think with whatever story you're trying to tell, I think you should just go all out. Like, just like, I know a lot of people are like, well, you're doing your first comic, like, don't do like a magnum opus and don't swing for the fence. And it's like, all I've ever done is swing for the fence.
Yeah.
I just think that, like, from a financial standpoint, just kind of be smart about it and be kind of economic about that swing for the fence. Like, you don't have to get this, Greg Capullo level artist, for your cyberpunk comic. Like, someone who's pretty good, and you've got that great story, like, that's gonna read. Like, people are
Yeah.
gonna still be really into that. So, yeah, just be smart and kind of economical with your kind of financial risks. Creatively, just, so yeah, swing for the fence, get a great team, and start out at like a 5K goal, which is more than manageable for most projects.
Yeah, and I would also say, like, I think, yeah, like, the art. It's more about, the artist has to have an interesting style, right, and be
Yeah,
something that works for you. They don't have to be the greatest artist in the world.
yeah,
If it's interesting, and if you're gonna spend money, I would almost say spend it on the cover, because that's the first thing people see,
yeah,
right? Like, but yeah, no, it's true. It's like, that because it could cost easily. You can get into like ridiculous amounts of money that, like, it's just not realistic for somebody who's doing their first campaign. So I think that's great advice.
yeah. I mean,
So
and
yeah.
I always, when it comes to like art styles, if you ever want to choose like something simpler, I always think about Scott Pilgrim, and
Mhm.
like how simplistic that is, and how much of a great story that is anyway. So
Yeah.
it like a great story underneath like simplistic art is still going to be a great story. So you don't have to
Yeah.
get overly detailed artists to tell something compelling.
Yeah. All right. So now I always have like two kind of out there questions, but
Yeah.
nothing too crazy. But I'm gonna give you two here. So first, if Moonshine had a theme song, or maybe it does, what would it be?
Oh, if
Or even, like,
Moonshine.
you mentioned something, like, that sometimes the music will inspire you. Was there a song that you were thinking of while writing it? But yeah, if it had a theme song, what would it be? And then, yeah, was there a song that inspired you while writing it?
Um, I I don't know the name of the artist, but
Mm,
it is the song is called "Way Down We Go." It's a very
mhm.
popular song. If you've heard it, you'd be like, I've definitely heard this song. Um,
Okay.
but it was one of the first. It was kind of the thing I listened to on a walk, and it was like I saw the ending of the story, and I was like,
Okay.
oh, that's a cool, yeah. Let's try to figure out how the story builds to that.
Yeah.
And it kind of evoked a sense of a team of cowboys kind of riding into hell, and there's complications, people die, and really just kind of like trying to push through, like, no matter how bad it gets. And yeah, I think that kind of really kind of created the theme song for that.
Nice. So now, if there was a character from any genre, any universe, any genre that you can bring into the Moonshine universe, who would that be?
uh Probably Spike from Cowboy Bebop.
Okay.
I'd love to bring him. He can't smoke any cigarettes, but I his kind of like karate style, that kind of very always chill, nothing phases him. I could definitely see characters that are like, we've got this specific plan, and he's like chilling in the background, like, with his feet up. He'd be a fun character to bring into Moonshine.
Nice. So now, before we finish, can you just kind of let our listeners know, any information on the campaign, when it's ending, anything you'd like to share about the campaign and about you, how to follow you, your newsletter and everything? Feel free.
Yeah, so Moonshine is live on Kickstarter right now. If you want to get a copy of the book, Man on the Moon is the reward tier to get a physical copy of this book. It's got 3 weeks left. We are about halfway funded already, so we're in pretty good shape. Um, yeah, so Moonshine Book One, that's the easiest way to find it. And then you can find me on Instagram at BananaBat. And then I do Twitter sometimes. It's at T/J.
Cool. Great. Awesome. Well, Tony, it's been awesome. Great having you to talk, and can't wait to see the book, and definitely would love to chat again at some point soon.
Yeah, definitely, for sure. Yeah, thanks for having me on. I had a good time.
No problem. Thank you.